Well, good morning, everybody. Boy, do we have a hell of a lot of things to get to going on today here. Starting with the trial for Derek Chauvin continues, and we'll talk a bit about what happened there, what some of the prosecution laid out, and some of the other evidence that may be presented. I've got an old article, but just something to talk about as we look into whether we can find intent with this or not. In other news, Biden has come out with a $2.5 trillion infrastructure plan. There's a bunch of stuff in there, and we'll talk a bit about that, but I've not sat down and read this entire thing yet, and I don't think anybody in Congress has either. So we will talk about what's going on with that and what this could mean for the economy going forward. Georgia continues to have its fight, and it looks like Delta and Coca-Cola have come back and turned around and said, you know what? No, we were wrong. We were lying when we said that we were in support of this bill. But, we're not going to say anything until after everything is signed into law, and we can't do anything anyway. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. And I've got some good news out of Wisconsin here, and today is Thursday, so we're doing a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and I bet you guys can't even guess what the thing that I like is today. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jay Edgar. Welcome to Contemporary. We have got a bunch of stuff to get to. I've counted. I've got 33 tabs sitting up here. 33. That's amazing. And I've got my chat over here on the wrong window here, so let's get that moved over here. And let's get into the news of the day here. Before we got into anything, though, a friend of the show, Quest Fanning, who it looks like is in the chat today, brought this nice little picture to my attention here. The picture, for those of you listening back on the audio platform, or just kind of listening in and as background noise, is a picture of Biden-Harris plowed into a soybean field. As Sandra Larson tweets out, this is back, these are old tweets, but they still came back and surfaced yesterday. Sandra Larson tweets out on October 9th of 2020, my dad's soybean field in North Carolina, and no such username, who is no such username 1 over on Twitter, on October 11th, retweeted it back out and said, of course it's a soy field. Why wouldn't it be anything but a soy field? So I thought that was funny. Like I say, it's an old tweet, but I thought it was funny enough anyway. But hey, it's going to go right on the theme, because when we start out talking about Chauvin, we're going to be talking about an old article as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Before we get into any more of the news here, head on over and bookmark freedomscoop.com. We will be premiering the brand new website coming up on April 17th for the 24-hour live stream. We are going 24 hours to benefit the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and for suicide prevention awareness. Looking forward to having you guys here. The guest list keeps growing. I've got another person confirmed yesterday, so we've got a time in for that. I've actually got to sit down with the scheduler and see who we can put in where. I've got some people in the morning now, which is great. I'm so happy for the way this is turning out. I hope you guys come back and enjoy. For $12.50, John from the Generational Gap will shave his beard. I think we agreed for $500. Stephen Ignoramus will write a song on the spot that day on whatever topic that we want to see, and he'll be taking requests on his. I think I want to set a game up where if you donate like $5, you get to make a request while he's up and playing. So I'll discuss that with him, see if he likes that idea or not, but that could be another fun game that we play there. So lots and lots of stuff to go on with this, but hope you guys come and join us for that. But since the website's not up running yet, make sure you head on over and check out my friends, The Generational Gap, The Freckles and Brit Show, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, and The R-Rated Conservative. Once we get the website up and running, we will have one good, convenient place where you can go and find all of them and also pick up swag and directly support great creators. All right, looking into the Dow. Now, I looked at an IBD article at the beginning of the day, but I didn't put it in, where they said that, oh, well, the stocks didn't change when Biden announced his infrastructure plan, and that's going to be a good thing. Well, they kind of did, though, because we had another day of downturn. It looks like the futures are up, and we'll talk a bit about what that could mean when we talk about the infrastructure plan, because there are some people that say it could lift the economy. I don't know about that, but the high taxes going into it could halt progress as well. So there are a couple different ways that we can look at this here, and we will take the objective way to do. But that's where we ended. 32,981.55 is where the Dow ended yesterday, and it is starting to trade right now. Looking at the Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now is at 58,598 US dollars and 40 US cents. That is a slight, and I mean ever so slight, because it was, within $100, I think, downtick from yesterday. So it's kind of holding steady right now. We will see what happens once the infrastructure plan comes out. If it can get passed and how much money we print off of it, that we might actually see this shoot back up again. So pay attention to your Bitcoin, and I'm not going to give you financial advice, but I would think about grabbing a little bit of it at least at this point. Looking at gas around the Madison area, Costco remains at $2.52 as the low price leader in Madison. They're the only station. I'm sorry, that's not correct. They are not the only station at $2.52. Usually they put these in numerical order. Okay, so there are a couple that are at $2.52, a couple at $2.53. It looks like a couple of them are starting to shoot back up to $2.56, $2.57, $2.59. So we will see where gas goes as we go along. And let's see what the investors have to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures rise as yields ease, EV leaders, NIO, Tesla, XPeng set to jump. From Scott Latonin, Dow Jones futures along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ 100 futures were higher early Thursday following Wednesday's tech strengths as Treasury yields eased from recent highs. EV leaders, NIO, XPeng, and Tesla stock were set to jump at the open, while Boeing and Microsoft are in or near buy zones. Among the Dow Jones leader, Apple rallied 1% pre-market Thursday, while Microsoft also moved up about 1% in today's stock market. Boeing remains in a buy range following Monday's bullish move and edged higher in morning trade. Tesla moved up over 2% pre-market Thursday, on pace to add to Wednesday's 5% rise. China EV leaders NIO and XPeng reported delivery figures overnight and were set to jump at the stock market open. Micron Technologies reported earnings after the close on Wednesday. Among the top stocks to watch, FANG leaders Alphabet and Facebook are approaching new buy points. Microsoft is an IBD leaderboard stock. Boeing was Monday's IBD stock of the day, while Alphabet and Facebook were featured in this week's Stocks Near a Buy Zone. On the futures, ahead of the stock market open on Thursday, Dow futures rose 0.1% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures moved up 0.3%. NASDAQ 100 futures rallied 0.95% versus fair value. They're going to be the big winner of the day. Remember, trading in Dow Jones futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Early Thursday, the 10-year Treasury yield eased to 1.718% after hitting a 14-month high on Tuesday at 1.765%. Among exchange-traded funds, the Innovator IBD 50 traded up 1%. NASDAQ 100 tracker Invesco QQQ Trust ETF rallied 1%. Meanwhile, the SPDR S&P 500 ETF moved up 0.3%. So we will see what happens with this. We'll see where inflation goes and what happens if this big infrastructure bill passes. Let's keep going. From CNBC, 5 things to know before the stock market opens on Wednesday. Here are the most important news, trends, and analysis that investors need to start their trading day. Number 1, stock set to open mixed after the Dow fell from a record high. U.S. stock futures were mixed Wednesday, one day after the Dow Jones Industrial fell 0.3%, breaking a 3-session winning streak and slipping from its previous record high close. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ also dropped slightly as tech stocks came under pressure after the 10-year Treasury yield hit a new 14-month high of 17.76 on Tuesday. So the yields are going to be what makes or breaks this, it looks like. A 10-year Treasury yield dips after ADP private jobs report. The 10-year Treasury yield dipped but held around 1.72% on Wednesday morning after ADP's monthly look at job trends in the U.S. company showed 517,000 positions were added in March despite coming in slightly below estimates. It was the fastest pace in September and well above February's disappointing 176,000. As of late, the ADP report has not been a great indicator of what the government's monthly employment data might show. March jobs report is set for a release on Friday, despite the Good Friday holiday, the Good Friday's holiday's closure of the stock market. Sorry about that. I want to talk like Biden. With the thing, man. Pfizer says COVID vaccine 100% effective in kids ages 12 to 15, where their natural body biology is 99.9999999% effective. Pfizer said Wednesday that a new study shows its coronavirus vaccine was 100% effective in adolescents ages 12 to 15. The U.S. drug giant, which developed the two-shot regimen in partnership with Germany's BioNTech, plans to submit the data to FDA as soon as possible. CEO Albert Bourla said in a statement, kids in that age group could be eligible for the vaccine before the new school year in the fall. Well, enjoy. Biden set to unveil his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. We saw that, and we'll talk a bit about that later on. And number 5, college athlete compensation case comes before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on Wednesday is set to hear arguments from the National College Athletics Association in a case over whether the organization can cap education-related benefits paid to college athletes against the backdrop of the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. The case comes as broader debate rages over compensation for student athletes. Some of the players in the March Madness game have sought to pressure the NCAA over its compensation policies using the hashtag not NCAA property. And that's going to be an interesting way to do this because, really, honestly, I mean, when you're going to some of these schools and getting into these basketball programs, you're doing so on a massive, massive scholarship that usually covers your entire tuition. So that's, I mean, it's not as much as the NBA guys make, but it's definitely not something to fucking cough at either. I mean, especially if you're going to, like, the Ivy Leagues or Gonzaga or something like that. That's not a small number by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think that athletes should be paid to play. I absolutely don't. It also appears that my live chat's not working. But that's okay, because we do have... I've got another monitor over here. So just so you guys know, live chat doesn't appear to be working over there. But anyway, going back onto the NCAA thing, I don't think athletes should be paid to play in college basketball directly by the college. I don't think that's a fair thing, especially with the compensation that they're getting. In terms of some of these guys are getting a free ride, and if we want to go as far as to say all of them should get a free ride, especially if they're bringing that kind of money into the college, then yes, they should all get a free ride. Now, merchandise, that's going to become where we come on a dicey territory because the NCAA, March Madness Incorporated, I mean, even the Rose Bowl, the football players, not so much the baseball players because there aren't as many people watching college baseball, but especially the basketball and football players. Their colleges and the NCAA themselves are making massive, massive profits off of selling these kids' names on merchandise. If the kids aren't making at least a royalty off of that, and I don't know if they are because I don't know enough about the subject, if they're not making royalty off of that, then yeah, we actually do need to be having a conversation about that because they should be making royalty. If their name and their numbers are out there, they should be making royalties off that. Somebody can check my math to see if that's actually happening, but yes, they absolutely should on royalties. So I'm not sure what the Supreme Court case is. Actually, we'll look into that for tomorrow because I know tomorrow's going to be, hopefully because of Good Friday, a kind of a slow news day. So I don't trust the government to make it a slow news day, but let's make a note of the fact that we're actually going to look into see what the Supreme Court case is for March Madness. All right, let's get into the major news of the day. From NBC Palm Springs, before we get even into the Chauvin stuff, this is just breaking right now. Multiple victims found at the scene of a deadly shooting in Orange, California, police say. This is from News Staff by Joe Sutton and Madeline Holcomb. This comes to NBC Palm Springs via CNN. 4 people, including a child, were killed in a mass shooting at an office complex in Orange, California on Wednesday night, a police official said. Tonight, around 5:30 p.m., officers arrived to a call of shots fired at the area of 202 West Lincoln. Lieutenant Jenner Amat said, adding that officers encountered gunshots that were being fired at the scene. An officer-involved shooting occurred, and a suspect was transported to the hospital. Amat said the department did not give any other information about the suspect or about the 4 victims. I can tell you that we haven't had an incident like this in the city of Orange since 1997, Ahmad said. It's such a tragedy for the victims, their families, our community, and our police department. News of the shooting drew immediate condemnation. Horrifying and heartbreaking, our hearts with the families impacted by this terrible tragedy tonight, Gavin Newsom said in a tweet. Katie Porter said she and her team are monitoring the situation. I'm deeply saddened by the reports of the mass shooting in Orange County. I'm continuing to keep victims and their loved ones in my thoughts as we continue to learn more, Porter said in a tweet. The FBI LA division confirmed to CNN it responded to the shooting in a routine manner, but the Orange Police Department was the lead in the investigation. So, we don't know any other details of this right now as of yet, but definitely something to look forward to, something to watch, something to see what's going on with that. I just want to check this here. So give me just a brief moment. I'm going to double check the live chat because then you guys can talk to each other cross-platform. Let me get rid of this here quick. We'll do some on-air production, then we're going to get into the Chauvin stuff. So I'm going to reset the chat bot to see if that fixes it. Let me just see if I'm monitoring. Yeah, it looks like everything else is sending, so let's get the chat bot up and let's see if that fixed it. Alright. Chatbot is back up, so if you guys want to go back and test that a little bit to see if it's still going. Otherwise, I mean, you're just going to be limited to talking to people on your own platform, unfortunately. But, unfortunately, sometimes that's the way it goes when we're using third-party software. Let's get back into this. And get back into the news. Alright, starting with the Chauvin trial for the day. Now, before we get into the details of what happened on the Chauvin trial, I want to just talk a bit about what this tweet was from Andy Ngo and the article that came with it. So Andy Ngo tweeted out 14 hours ago, Dr. Andrew Baker, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl is a fatal level of fentanyl under normal circumstances. Reading into this, this is a KARE 11 article from August 26th of 2020. So this is still when we were in the midst of all of this here. New documents filed in the George Floyd case give new information about the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's findings in Floyd's autopsy. Handwritten notes of a law enforcement interview with Dr. Andrew Baker, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, say Floyd had 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl in his system. If he were found dead at home, alone, and no other apparent causes, this could be acceptable to call an OD. Deaths have been certified with levels of 3, Baker told investigators. In another new document, Baker said, that is a fatal level of fentanyl under normal circumstances. But then Baker added, I'm not saying this killed him. Defense attorneys for the officers have signaled that they will argue Floyd died from the drugs and pre-existing health conditions. The new documents say Floyd had a heavy heart and at least one artery was approximately 75% blocked. Dr. Stephen Nelson, chairman of Florida's Medical Examiners Commission, who is not affiliated with the case, reviewed the new files and says it doesn't mean the drugs or health condition is what caused Floyd's death. We've all had cases where those kinds of levels come into play. You've got to look at the whole picture, Nelson said. It's one thing to die with something, it's another thing to die from something. And that's the same thing we see with COVID-19. It's whether or not you died with COVID-19 or from COVID-19. And I do feel that a lot of these cases of the commie coup were attributed to dying with COVID-19 rather than dying from it. But that's an important, and that's going to be the big detail that goes along with what's happening with this case, what happens with this trial. And that's, as I said right from the beginning, what this is going to come down to is which ME's report is the one that's admissible in court. Because we saw one ME report that said that it was the drugs, the blocked artery, and the fact that he had the commie coup at the time is what killed him. And there was not enough arterial damage to call it, to say asphyxiation from the knee on the neck. And there is another medical examiner's report that says it was definitely the knee on the neck. He was asphyxiated and he was held down improper to the way the chokehold went. That's going to be the key kicker in the case as to where it goes for manslaughter. Now, as far as the murder charges, we still have to see intent, and I don't see intent. no matter how many of these sad stories, and we'll see another one coming up here in a second, how many of these people come onto the stands and say, I wish I could have been there to help. None of that shows intent. And I've got a feeling, even if Chauvin goes down for manslaughter too, which I actually think is a fair possibility, depending on which ME examiner's report comes in. I have a very, very deep-seated feeling that the Man 2 charge will stick, and Chauvin will see probably 5 years. It's 50-50 for me. I can't say yes or no it's going to stick, but the murder 1, murder 2, I don't see the intent there yet. Unless the prosecution has something completely out of left field that can show massive intent, that Chauvin got up and threw his shirt on and put his badge on and said, I'm going to kill me a George Floyd today. I don't see the intent. And that's what's going to come. That's what's going to come into play for this one. Let's see what's happening in current events. This first coming from Yamiche El-Sindor, who we'll remember was the one who got to ask the totally hardball question of Biden during the press conference about the border. Mr. Biden, we've got to talk about the border. Now, are the people coming over because you're a nice guy or because you're a saint? And how perfect were you when you woke up this morning, Mr. Biden? So, from Yamiche El-Sindor, Charles McMillan, who tried to speak to George Floyd, as officers first tried to put him in the police car, and then later as Floyd shouted for his mama while Derek Chauvin kneeled on his neck, just broke down on the witness stand. Court is on a break right now. Let's have a listen.
Mr. McMillan, do you need a minute?
Oh my God.
Just take your time. Let us know when you're ready.
I'll just give you a moment, Mr. McMillan. I'm not sure if there's water for you as well. Oh. If you need a break to get some water, let me know, and we can take a break. May I approach, Your Honor?
You in.
Thank you.
So that's, I mean, we didn't see anything of substance from this. This is just the guy that was breaking down off of this. So let's look in and see what else we have to see from this case. From CNN, Derek Chauvin's body camera video shows his reaction just after George Floyd left in an ambulance. From Eric Levinson and Aaron Cooper. Moments after George Floyd was taken away in an ambulance last May, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was confronted by a witness who took issues with Chauvin's kneeling on Floyd's neck. That's one person's opinion, Chauvin responded as he got into his squad car. We had to control this guy because he's a sizable guy. It looks like he's probably on something. The short clip from Chauvin's own body camera played his criminal trial Wednesday represents the first time the public has heard the ex-officer's perspective in the 10 months since Floyd died under his knee, launching worldwide protest moment. Charles McMillan, the 61-year-old witness, testified that he observed Floyd's arrest on May 25, 2020, and that he encouraged Floyd to comply with the police, repeatedly saying, "You can't win," as Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck, and Floyd cried out for help. McMillan can be heard on video telling the police to get your knee off his neck. After Floyd's limp body was taken away, McMillan had a short conversation with Chauvin because what I watched was wrong, he said. Charles McMillan had a short conversation with a former officer just moments after George Floyd was taken away in an ambulance. The third day of Chauvin's trial featured testimony from several bystanders who interacted with Floyd, as well as graphic experts of body camera footage showing his arrest and final moments. In the videos, Floyd gaps that he's claustrophobic, repeatedly says that he can't breathe, and calls for his mother. I have to ask, because once again, I haven't been watching the full trial, and I have a feeling that a lot of social media hasn't either, but if they actually watch the full video, the full body cam from this, because it does specifically say excerpts in this. I have watched the full video. The Daily Mail, I believe, still has it up. I will see if I can find that and link that in the Discord for you guys. But the Daily Mail, it does appear, still has the whole thing up. And you should definitely watch it because it will that's where I'm having trouble finding intent, is because I've seen that whole video. Now, of course, the prosecution, and they're the ones who are presenting witnesses and evidence right now as the prosecution, are going to cut the full body cam footage up to try and make their case the best that they can. Because that's what lawyers do. They want to make their case because they're working for the state to do so. That is their job. That's what they do. But I do have to wonder how the jury's mind would change if they did see the full video. And that is another... Once again, we go back to intent off this. Because there is a murder 2 and murder 3 charge off this. It is intent. George Floyd was a big, big man. He was a large man, and he was up on something. And now to the point where people say, well, you should have let me off of him, or you should have got off him, let me go in and check his pulse, or you should have got off him and turned him over on his side. Well, when you've got somebody that big, then you don't know what the dude is on. You do have to consider the safety of the bystanders as well. Now, I understand that the EMT knows that she's going into a dangerous situation as well, but, I mean, in the moment, I don't see intent. Once again, depending on the ME's report that comes in, I can see man to. I can see that as a 50-50 shot. But I don't see intent. So that's what we have for that. I've got one from Fox News, and then we will move on. Because this was kind of interesting to me because, well, let's just read the article. Derek Chauvin trial, key witnesses to invoke the Fifth Amendment, refuses to testify, from David Arrow. A key witness who was with George Floyd on the day that he died informed the court that he will invoke the Fifth Amendment if asked to testify in Derek Chauvin's murder trial. The Hennepin County Public Defender's Office filed a notice Wednesday on behalf of Maurice Lester Hall, 42, who was in the car with Floyd when police approached him for allegedly using a fake $20 bill at Cup Foods in Minneapolis. Well, this adds a whole wrinkle to the story. Mr. Maurice Lester Hall, though through undersigned counsel, hereby provides notice to all parties in this manner that if called to testify, he will invoke his Fifth Amendment privileges against self-incrimination, said a notice filed by Assistant Public Defender Adrian Cousins. Therefore, counsel for Mr. Hall respectively moves this court to quash the subpoena and release Mr. Hall from any obligations therein. Authorities previously said Hall was a key witness in the state's investigation into the 4 officers who apprehended Floyd. He was seen in police body camera footage, sitting in the car with Floyd, his longtime friend, as another occupant, Shawanda Hill, sat in the back seat. Prosecutors and defense attorneys, Eric Nelson, also listed Hall as potential witness in the trial of Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer, reports said. Hall told the New York Times last June that Floyd didn't resist the arrest and instead attempted to defuse the situation. I could hear him pleading, "Please, officer, what's all this for?" he said. An official said Hall initially gave a false name to officers after Floyd's death. He then left Minneapolis and was tracked down in Texas and arrested due to outstanding warrants for felony possession of a firearm, felony domestic assault, and felony drug possession, the paper reported. Hall described himself as a key witness in the Times interview. I'm a key witness to the cops murdering George Floyd, and they want to know my side, whether I've been through. It's all over now. It's not about me, he said. So that does raise some questions off of this, and once again, always innocent until proven guilty. But I do have to wonder what it is that he knows and what he's incriminating himself against off of this one, because, is he super hopped up on fentanyl and he thought that Floyd was the designated driver, the guy who could drive because he was fine? This just raises many more questions than answers off of this, so I guess we'll see which direction the trial goes. We will continue to watch this. This will continue today, so we'll be talking about it tomorrow. I don't know if the trial will go on Good Friday or not. I don't know if the courts will be open for Good Friday for the holiday, but we will see what happens with that. We got to talk about infrastructure. Starting with WABI 5. Out of Bangor, Maine, Biden announces huge infrastructure plan to win back the future. Come on, man, I'm going to win back the future. This comes to WABI 5 out of the Associated Press. President Biden outlined a huge $2.3 trillion plan Wednesday to re-engineer the nation's infrastructure in what he billed as a once-in-a-generation investment in America that would undo his predecessor's signature legislative achievement of giant tax cuts for corporations in the process. It's also going to undo your tax cuts. Speaking at a Carpenters Union training center in Pittsburgh, Biden drew comparisons between his hard-headed proposed transformation of the U.S. economy and the space race, and promised results as grand in scale as the New Deal or Great Society programs that shaped the 20th century, and also extended the Great Depression. But we won't talk about that. It's not a plan that tinkers around the edges, Biden said. It's a once-in-a-generation investment. And I know, because I've been through 3-4 generations. It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since the last time we had a Democrat in office. Since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago. In fact, it's the largest American jobs investment since World War II. It'll create millions of jobs, good-paying jobs. White House officials say the spending would generate those jobs as the country shifts away from fossil fuels and combats the perils of climate change. I'm very interested to see how that goes, how we're going to shift the country away from fossil fuels by loading up even more dump trucks and going in and more concrete mixers and more diesel-powered vehicles to go out and build infrastructure. And, I mean, we do need to fix infrastructure, don't get me wrong. It should be a state thing. It shouldn't be a federal thing. It never should be a federal thing. But Democrats going to do what Democrats going to do. And I told you this. When it started to look like the media was going to call the race for Biden, I told you that this was coming. That we were going to see a massive infrastructure plan, because that's what Democrats do. They always do that. That's their job creation method. Barack did it. Bill did it. Jimmy did it. It's always infrastructure, because that's grants that they come out. They are technically creating private jobs because, I mean, the trucks are privately owned by a company. The county is not the one that's usually going out and doing the road construction. Sometimes they'll put a truck in to go and fill in some of the gaps, but for the most part, the county is not the one that's going out and doing the construction. That's all private. They're private firms that are doing it. I know the firm around here that's doing the interstate rebuild over in Janesville. I've worked with them before. But with that, it's always infrastructure, and we're always going to see infrastructure when a Democrat comes in, because that's how they create jobs. White House officials say the spending would generate those jobs as the country shifts away from fossil fuels and combats the perils of climate change. It's also an effort to compete with the technology and public investments made by China, which has the world's second largest economy and is fast gaining on the U.S. Dominant position. I'm convinced that if we act now, in 50 years, people are going to look back and say, this is the moment when America won the future, Biden said. The Democratic president's infrastructure projects would be financed by higher corporate taxes, which means that your factory jobs go away as they get outsourced to China. A trade-off that could lead to fierce resistance from the business community and thwart attempts to work with Republican lawmakers. Biden hopes to pass an infrastructure plan by summer, which could mean relying solely on the slim Democratic majorities in the House and Senate. I don't know how they're going to do the budget reconciliation so close again. Now, like I said, when I first talked about budget reconciliation, they are technically allowed 2 this year because they didn't do one for 2020. They didn't do a budget for 2020. So they can do a reconciliation for 2021, and they can count the Commie Coof relief bill as the one that they did for 2020. They can fudge the numbers and do it that way, but that's shady as shit. The higher corporate tax rate, I'm going to talk like Biden. Anyway, man. The higher corporate taxes would aim to raise the necessary piles of money over 15 years and then reduce the deficit going forward. In doing so, Biden would undo the action by Trump and congressional Republicans to lift the corporate tax rate to 28% from the 21% rate set in a 2017 overhaul. 91 Fortune 500 companies, including Amazon, pay not a single solitary penny in income tax, Biden said. No, they pay corporate tax. Actual house plan, Joe Biden. But that's what we're seeing here, this huge plan that's coming out. Let's see if we can find some details on this. Got one here from the USA Today. Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan would lift economy, but higher taxes may hamper growth until projects roll out. From Paul Davidson. President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan could keep this year's projected economic boom from slowing significantly in 2022 following the COVID-19 downturn, while boosting growth and productivity over the long term, economists say. It keeps the party going, economist Troy Lutka of research firm Natixis says of the infrastructure legislation. Some analysts, however, say the blueprint could actually hinder the economy in 2022 before it begins juice growth in later years. That's because the infrastructure projects will take a couple years to roll out, while higher taxes may dampen business investment and economic activity in the meantime. Biden's plan would rebuild the nation's roads, bridges, and rail service, support clean energy, provide universal broadband, and construct millions of affordable homes, among other initiatives. Although Republicans are already denouncing the legislation, Democrats could seek to pass all or most of it with a simple majority vote in the Senate through budget reconciliation, as they did with the $1.9 trillion commie fucking coup relief bill earlier this year. To pay for much of the plan, Biden is proposing an increase of the corporate tax rate to 28% from 21% and boosting the minimum tax on U.S. corporations to 21%. Like many economists, Natixis expects growth of close to 7% this year, the most since the early 80s as coronavirus vaccinations spread, and Americans flush with cash from federal assistance resume regular life in large numbers. Although solid growth is still forecast for 2022, the plan will mark a substantial pullback from this year's pace as the effects of the government aid fade. Biden's infrastructure plan could provide a booster shot. Economist Ludka reckons the economy will grow 3.3% next year, but Biden's proposal could push growth over 4%. Gregory Dacko, chief economist at Oxford Economics, estimates the economy will expand by 3% next year, and the Biden plan would tack another half a percentage point. Or, alternately, you could drive more and more jobs out to China and Turkey and the Middle East and Mexico, and most of your taxpayers could lose everything, lose their houses, and we could see another downturn. But don't worry, we're doing infrastructure, so you can go and get a CDL and go drive a dump truck for somebody. That's the Biden administration's version of learn to fucking code. So that's one of the directions that we're going here, and I don't know which direction this will go. Like I said, as of this point, I know that Democrats always do infrastructure. Let's talk a little bit more about what's in this, though. I got one here from Fox Business for you guys. Biden's $2.5 trillion infrastructure plan includes pro-union legislation. I love how that's gone from $2 trillion to $2.3 trillion to $2.5 trillion. In the matter of 3 articles, too, by the way. From Audrey Conklin. President Biden's $2.5 trillion infrastructure plan includes the House-passed Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which awaits a Senate vote. The bill would allow the National Labor Relations Board to fine employers who violate workers' rights, ease restrictions against worker strikes, follow California's new independent contractor law, and erode right-to-work laws in 27 states that have been in place since the 1950s. You are going to fuck the millennial generation. Right there. This one right here. You are going to fuck so many people my age if you put that through. There's not going to be any escape from it. Except for the fact that we're going to go right back to the top of the article somehow. President Biden is calling on Congress to update the social contract that provides workers with a fair shot to get ahead, overcome racial and other inequalities.
I want to go to Larry Kudlow right now, of course, the former director of the...
Nobody likes you. That have been barriers for too many Americans, expand the middle class, and strengthen communities, White House fact sheet states. He's calling on Congress to ensure all workers have a free and fair choice to join a union by passing the PRO Act and guarantee union and bargaining rights for service workers. Oh, And you're going to try and pass this under the cover of budget reconciliation. We're going to jam as much fucking pork as we can in to try and pass this under budget reconciliation too. Supporters of the legislation, including President Biden, argue that the PRO Act will help workers fight for and earn fairer wages, benefits, and overall treatment from employees amid the COVID-19 pandemic. You fucking job killer. You think Amazon is going to keep... How much do you think Amazon's going to keep in this country if you do that? How much do you think is going to get automated if you do that? How many more factory jobs do you want to kill, Biden? Are you not going to stop until everybody's working in a grocery store or a restaurant? Jesus. But critics argue the legislation could harm employees who do not want to join a union and pay union dues. That's me. As well as independent contractors, especially women. There is a provision in the PRO Act that some experts have compared to California's Assembly Bill 5, or AB 5, which passed in January of 2020, aimed to make nearly all gig workers in California's employees if they meet certain requirements and threaten thousands of jobs, including 200 freelance journalists at Vox. Typical employees work on interdependent teams, and there's a lot of coordination, communication, shared responsibility, and results. Leah Palagashvili. That's what I'm going to go with on that one. A senior research fellow at George Mason University's Mercatus Center, who just published 2 reports on independent workers in the U.S. and told Fox News independent workers, freelancers, consultants, and contractors provide an individual-based product or service, and it's more easily separable. How many more millennials do you want to fuck, Biden? And not in the way where you go up and... Oh, man, you smell good. Not that way. She added that the difference between the 2 types of workers points to the importance of flexibility for independent workers and why the majority of them freely choose to work independently and do not want to be classified as typical employees who work 8-hour days, typically from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and typically between 46 to 48 hours weeks per year, rather. Reclassifying independent workers as employees is pretty problematic, because you don't want to be in a position where independent workers are losing their jobs and then also not becoming employees, especially in light of COVID. And a lot of people are still unemployed. Palagashvili said AB 5 targeted big companies that hire gig workers like Uber and Lyft. Oh. I gotta ask again, how many jobs do you want to kick out of this country? How many jobs do you want to eliminate? And they're going to try and jam this through with budget reconciliation on top of it. This is amazing. AB 5 targeted big companies that hired gig workers like Uber and Lyft, but had ripple effects on other independent workers, particularly female workers who list services at goods on Etsy, Care.com, and other similar digital platforms. I mean, this even goes as far as to your Monette salesman, or even the It Works people, the multi-level marketing people. I'm sorry, but that's going to hammer Freedom Scoop if that goes through. Which I think might be part of, not necessarily Freedom Scoop, but like all your missing link media and all the independent journalists that go with it. This... And once again, they're going to try and jack this through with budget reconciliation. So that's definitely something to look forward to and something to watch as we go on. I hadn't seen the infrastructure plan because I worked yesterday, but we need to be paying attention to what's going on with this one here. All right. Let's keep going. Talking more about the infrastructure. Uh-oh, she's being slow again. I hope I didn't get just kicked offline. Are we back? Are we still good? Let me see, because it looks like I'm not moving over on the monitor. Looks like I'm offline as far as the as DLive goes. So let's double check. All right, I'm back on DLive. Let's see if I get back up onto YouTube. All right, looks like we're back up on YouTube too. Sorry about that. It looks like we had a little bit of an internet hiccup. All right, so let's keep going on infrastructure. Kevin Glass tweets out, Chicago to New Orleans, a 2.5-hour flight, takes 19 hours on Amtrak. Because part of what's going on here is infrastructure with Amtrak. So we just got a massive handout to Amtrak going along with this. And this is their new map that's going along here, which, I mean, if people want to go on train, that's on them. I know that not everybody wants to go onto a plane. And then, going back and forth between Milwaukee and Chicago, too. It's not worth it to get on a plane. The traffic in Chicago sucks when you could just take, the local train, the Metra, down to Central Station and then take that up to Milwaukee. On the plus side, Amtrak will only charge you $110 for a ticket, and the cheapest one way I could find by air is $180. So let's talk a little bit about Amtrak. From Denver 7 ABC, the Denver channel, Biden infrastructure plan could bring Amtrak service to more cities. From Justin Boggs, it's no secret that President Biden is a big fan of Amtrak. Well, and of course, Mayor Pete loved trains. That's why he's the transportation director. Well, before becoming president, Biden was likely the most prominent and vocal supporter of the rail service. Now that Biden is in office, major changes could be coming to Amtrak following Biden's announcement of a $2.2 trillion infrastructure plan. Amtrak released plans for updated service throughout the U.S. Our plan calls on creating 30 new routes, adding more trips on 20 existing routes, and extending service to 160 new communities. The additional services would be in place by 2035, Amtrak says. The plan calls on Amtrak service for major cities such as Vegas, Nashville, Phoenix, Columbus, and Louisville, which currently don't have service. Amtrak would also extend services to mid-sized cities such as Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. The plan would connect Las Vegas to Los Angeles, Cleveland to Cincinnati, Atlanta to Nashville, Phoenix to Los Angeles, and Tucson and Detroit to Toronto. By adding Las Vegas, Nashville, Phoenix, Columbus, and Louisville, Amtrak would provide service to all 30 of the largest cities in the U.S. Amtrak has a bold vision to bring the energy-efficient, world-class inner-city rail service up to 160 new communities across the nation, as we also invest in our fleet and stations across the U.S., Amtrak CEO Bill Flynn said, "With this federal investment, Amtrak will create jobs and improve equity across regions, cities, and the entire country. And we're ready to deliver. America needs a rail network that offers frequent, reliable, sustainable, and equitable train service. Now is our time. Let's make rail the solution." Well, that'll go really good when AOC Biscuit comes out in Outlaws Plains, and then the train that goes to Honolulu will carry Mazie Hirono. Biden has pitched $80 billion in funds for Amtrak, the White House said. These funds would be used to address Amtrak's repair backlog, modernize the high-traffic Northeast Corridor, and improve existing corridors and connect new city pairs and enhance grant and loan programs that support passenger and freight rail safety, efficiency, and electrification. So far, Biden's infrastructure plan hasn't generated much bipartisan support, and whether it ultimately gets GOP support remains questionable. A number of Republicans have scoffed at the price tag of the plan and the increase of the corporate tax rate. So, and there's a lot of moving parts with this as well. It's not just the fact that he's going out and making rail. There are people that prefer to travel by rail. I don't understand why. As the tweeter that we talked about before pointed out, it takes well over the time it takes to fly to New Orleans than it does to go by Amtrak. 19 hours. Now, you could get a lot of work done in 19 hours, but that's 19 hours sitting in one place. Where you can get on there, get on the plane, Be there in 2.5 hours. Get your work done. Enjoy your time while you're in New Orleans. Get back on the plane and go back. It's part of the reason too. Like I haven't gone down, and for me, I'm a Midwesterner, and I've got to give a call out to Right Girl Problems over on Twitter for saying the same thing. I'm a Midwesterner. I drive everywhere. I've taken 4 flights in my life. 2 and from Phoenix and 2 and from New Hampshire. Those are the only 4 flights I've ever taken in my life. But also part of the reason that I haven't gone down to like Zion National Park right now is because, well, I was going to fly down to Utah and go and hike in Zion National Park until the Kami Coupe hit, and I decided that I didn't want to be in a large steel cylinder full of people who also may or may not have the Kami fucking Coupe. It's the same thing with a train. I don't want to be in the large steel cylinder with a bunch of people who might have the Kami fucking Coupe. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I could just drive down to Zion. That's fine. But there again, it's 25 hours driving from southern Wisconsin to Zion National Park. I get, let's say 7 days of vacation, because a full week is 40 hours, and that takes up 5 days plus the weekend days. I've got to find somebody to cover Contemporary, somebody to cover the Red Ned show for me, and then I lose 2 days of my vacation time going back and forth there, plus the gas, which the gas wasn't all that bad last summer. That's one of the other things too. I mean, you look at flights. I went down to Orlando last summer with Stephen Ignoramus. Now my truck has a 30-gallon tank in it, which at the time, between $1.04 and 97 cents a gallon, meant that it was $30-ish a fill up, $30 to $35 a fill up. Every time I filled up, and that whole trip I only filled up 5 times. There and back, and that's going via DC. That's not even just going straight to Orlando. That's going via DC. There and back, I only filled up 5 times. Whereas the cheapest ticket going down to Orlando in that same time frame was $300 to $400. So I came out ahead at that time. Now with gas being back up to $2.50, I can't do that. But there again, you're just about the same cost at this point to fly or to take the train, but you get that time back. You get that time back that you can spend and do the things that you want to do. So that's what I have to say about that. All right, let's go grab one from Axios. Let's talk about Georgia for a little bit, because that's coming up in the news. From Axios, Delta CEO calls new Georgia voting restrictions unacceptable. From Ivana Sarik. Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian condemned Georgia's new election laws as unacceptable in a memo circulated to staff on Wednesday, claiming that the entire rationale for this bill was based on a lie about widespread voter fraud in 2020. The Atlanta-based airline is one of the largest employers in Georgia and was facing calls for a boycott over its stance on the Republican-crafted law, per the Washington Post. Bastian sent out a memo last Friday, which he said he understood concerns about the law, but praised several elements and suggested it had improved considerably during the legislative process. In Wednesday's memo, Bastian reversed himself and said he now recognizes that the final bill is unacceptable and does not match Delta's values. After having time to now fully understand all that's in the bill, coupled with discussions with leaders and employees in the black community, it's evident that the bill includes provisions that will make it harder for many underrepresented voters, particularly black voters, to exercise their constitutional right to elect their representatives. That is wrong, Bastian wrote in Wednesday's memo. The pressure got to him. That's what happened. And I'll talk about that in just a second here, because we've got one other company that's jumping on board with that as well. Reading from NBC News. Give that a second to think back up. Delta, Coca-Cola CEOs blast Georgia's unacceptable voting law. This is from Jane C. Tim and Blaine Alexander. CEOs for Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola came out in strong opposition to Georgia's recently passed voting law on Wednesday, both calling the law unacceptable. On Wednesday morning, Delta CEO Ed Bastian said in a memo to employees that the law is unacceptable and does not match Delta's values. Let me be crystal clear and unequivocal. The legislation is unacceptable, Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy said later that day on NBC. In the weeks since the sweeping package of election restrictions was signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp, activists have threatened to boycott Delta and other Atlanta-based companies, saying they didn't do enough to stop the law from being passed. What are they going to do? You guys don't like it when your big CEO is by a politician. You hate money in politics. What exactly was Delta going to do? Oh, well, we're just going to take all of our factories or whatever the hell else Delta has, and we're going to take them out of Georgia if you do this. That's not cost effective. After having time to fully understand that all that's in the bill, coupled with discussions with leaders and employers in the black community, it's evident that the bill includes provisions that will make it harder for many underrepresented voters, particularly black voters, to exercise their constitutional right to elect their representatives. That is wrong, the memo reads. That's the one from Delta. Quincy said the company had opposed the bill from the start and had lobbied against it. No, it didn't. That was the reason that people were boycotting you. I understand that you don't have a fucking spine, but don't be a liar and a spineless fucking coward in the same sentence, Quincy. Our position remains the same. This legislation is wrong. It needs to be remedied. And we will continue to advocate for it, both in private and now, even more clearly in public, he said. Dozens of black business leaders publicly urged the corporation to oppose voting restrictions in a public letter on Wednesday. The New York Times, a former newspaper, first reported the letter. And inadvertently, Jenny Rubin puts it best. Inadvertently. Pressure works. Keep it up. These people don't give a fuck about the voting laws in Georgia. They just had a bunch of people come up and say, we're not going to use your product. And they had a bunch more people say that they were going to use the product. But it's always, you got to go to the woke side. But what gets me about this the most is the fact that now this bill is signed into law. These people both came out in favor of the law when it was still in the legislative process. They both came out and said, oh, this is fine and good. This will help shore up election. While it was in the legislative process. Fast forward, the bill is signed into law. And now they can come out and stand on their soapbox and virtue signal and say, look how pure and amazing we are because we oppose this bill. After it's finalized, and now it takes another act of Congress to get the fuck rid of. Now that it doesn't pose any consequences, now they can come out and stand on their soapbox and tell you how saintly they actually are. Fuck these people. All right, I got another tweet here for you. Ben Shapiro came under fire yesterday because he compared voter suppression to long lines on Disneyland. Let's listen to what Ben had to say.
Jim Crow explicitly created a separate system of law for black Americans and treated them as inferior. There's nothing in the law like that. That's not only an overstatement, it's just an outright lie. But, says Jamel Hill, all of corporate America should resonate to the lie. The law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. I mean, you mean you have to show that you are who you say you are when you vote absentee? If you can explain to me how that's racist, I'm willing to hear it. Anyone? Bueller? It limits the use of ballot drop boxes. Oh, you mean like ballot drop boxes where people could just stuff the ballot box or take ballots out of the ballot box? It hands state officials more power over local elections. Even before the legislation passed, many voters of color in Georgia faced hours-long queues at the polls. By the way, voter suppression doesn't involve long lines, any more than long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression. You know what voter suppression is? Voter suppression is where you don't get to vote. Making those waits even more arduous, the new law bans giving food and water to people in line to vote. That's not even true. It bans giving any gift to people in line when they are within 150 feet of the polling place. You can bring water with you. There are people outside who can give you water. This is just not true.
So he came under fire for that statement, and I don't know why, except for the fact that people want to come out and say that voter suppression is caused by long lines. And I want to go to a different point from what Ben had to say about that. By the way, Spartan, I see you too in the chat, by the way. Play Ben Shapiro at 1.5 speed. It's more fun. Bitch, I listen to Ben Shapiro at double speed on the old iPod when I'm at work. Ben Shapiro Show podcast at 2x speed. If you can't do that, you're not an OG. But as far as what's going on with this, now, one thing that I constantly, and people completely forget about this, whenever we talk about voter suppression and long lines and you can't bring food and water to people. Now, I live in a small town. I've told you that numerous times. I live in a town of about, it's actually considerably bigger than I thought it was. It's supposedly about 5,000 people live in this town. I go over to the city hall. There's never a line when I go to vote. I usually go early in the morning, but I go over to the city hall. I walk in. Okay, hey, I'm Jay Edgar. I give them my actual birth name, my real first name, but you guys don't know that. But I walk in there and say, hey, I'm Jay Edgar. Here's my ID. Oh, cool. Hey. Hi, Clara. Well, thanks for the ballot. All right. Yeah, I know how to do it. Thank you, though. Thanks for wanting to explain it to me. Awesome of you. I go in there, I fill out the bubbles, I shove the thing in the machine, and I get on with my day. There are long lines in bigger cities, and I've waited in a long line. I used to live in Kenosha. I've waited in a long line to go and vote, where it's been a half an hour process for me to go out and vote. And I can't imagine what they're going through in Milwaukee, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Green Bay, in Madison even. I'm so glad I never voted in Madison. I couldn't be around all those unwashed people for that long. But one thing that they never tell you when they say that it's Republican voter suppression because of long lines is the fact that they're all happening in big Democrat cities. And the big Democrat cities are the ones who denote polling places and volume. That's what they never tell you. Your municipality is the one who denotes how many polling places that you have open, what the hours are, and what the provisions are. And the small town that I live in has completely different provisions than the city of Milwaukee does. Yes, it only services 5,000 people, and that's not even that because, you've still got the people from, outside the town as well who are voting in the same district, the farmers who are coming in to vote in the same district, but, you've got the children, the people who are not eligible to vote. You've got all of that as well, so, yeah, it's serving about 3,000 people, and now in Milwaukee you've got, what do they have, like 4 precincts for an entire city of 400,000 people? Yes, you're going to get long lines. Open up more precincts to vote in. You're the government. You denote that, but they don't tell you that. They just say it's a Republican scheme to make sure that inner city people can't go and vote. All right, but that's what I have for that. Let's keep going. Speaking of Georgia, this is from IndieWire. Mark Hamill and James Mangold refuse to film in Georgia over Republican-backed voter law. I'm sure the people of Georgia, like my friend Jessica Green, are looking at this and saying, bye-bye. Bye. This is from Zach Sharf. Mark Hamill and James Mangold are 2 of Hollywood's biggest names. Why is Mark Hamill one of Hollywood's biggest names? He's famous for having a character die because he thought too fucking hard. I'm sorry, the Luke Skywalker thing has come and gone, dude. You were not one of the biggest names in Hollywood. Are rallying for a Hollywood boycott on filming in Georgia due to a controversial voting bill that many believe encourages voter suppression in the state. By The Hollywood Reporter, Republican Governor Brian Kemp signed the bill on March 25th that ushers in more rigid voter restrictions, which include banning the distribution of food and water on voting lines and limiting the number of ballot drop boxes. No, that's not what it fucking does. You are not allowed to conduct electioneering within 150 feet of a polling place where people are standing in line. You're not allowed to voter intimidate, and you're not allowed to, what's the word I'm looking for? Campaign. You're not allowed to campaign within X amount of distance of a polling place. And this shores that up by having, like I said, people can't go up into the line and say, hey, you look thirsty, man. Here's this can of Bang. You'll feel better after you drink it here. And hey, you know what? Stacey Abrams is, she's running for this. This is what her platform is. No, let's talk about this quietly here, but have this can of Bang, because then I can tell everyone that I brought you something in line. No, that's not allowed to do so. And it's the same thing with voter intimidation on top of it. The voting bill was condemned by the likes of Joe Biden, who called it the Jim Crow of the 21st century, and Stacey Abrams, a reminder of Georgia's dark past, and now it's attracting the scorn of Hollywood. Mangold, the director behind Logan and Oscar winner Ford vs. Ferrari, took to social media to declare, I will not direct a film in Georgia. Mangold's close collaborator, Francois Audai, a production designer on Logan, The Wolverine, and Ford vs. Ferrari, replied to the director by writing, I will not design a film in Georgia. I'm sure a lot of Georgia is happy about that. Now, it's going to take jobs away from Georgia, don't get me wrong. But it's going to take a lot of people away from Georgia, too. And they will go elsewhere. Maybe they'll go back to California. No, they don't want to do that. There's too many taxes over there. All right. And that's all that the Georgia people have got to be looking at this thing. Okay, bye. But that's what we see for that. All right, I've got one from the New York Post. This came to me via Seawall, who is in the chat as well. And we'll read the tweet that goes along with it as soon as it loads back up. Because, once again, we lost internet connection for a second. Now everything's got to reload. I will be so glad once I get this new computer up and running again, which will be coming in the near future. Man busted for Midtown attack on Asian women was on parole for killing his mom. From Joe Marino, Amanda Woods, and Leah Ustowich. Now, I initially didn't want to go on and cover the story because it's just another thing that's feeding into the narrative, but this last development in this really, really jumped this up and brought this back to my attention. The man busted for the hate-fueled attack on an Asian woman in Midtown was out on parole for killing his own mother back in 2002, authorities said. Brandon Elliott, 38, who lives in a nearby hotel that serves as a homeless shelter, was arrested early Wednesday and hit with a number of charges, including assault as a hate crime. It's not a hate crime, he's not white. That's what the mainstream media will tell you. An attempted assault as a hate crime, police said. He was caught on video mercilessly punching and kicking a 65-year-old victim in front of an apartment building at 360 West 43rd Street around 11:40 a.m. Monday, yelling, "Fuck you, you don't belong here," according to cops and police sources. In April of 2002, Elliott was charged with murder for using a kitchen knife to stab his own mother, Bridget Johnson, in the chest 3 times in their East 224th Street home in the Bronx, according to previous reports. The deadly attack took place in front of Elliott's 5-year-old sister. Sources told the Post it's unclear what led to the slaying. Johnson, 42, died a couple days later. Elliott was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. He was denied parole twice, first at a February 2017 hearing and again in December 2018. According to State Department of Corrections official, by the following year he was approved for release in September and sprung on a lifetime parole 2 months later. Wouldn't you know it? He got out, and he tried to kill somebody again. Sounds like a charming fellow, too. Absolutely does. Alright. But the tweet that came with this. Eugene Gu, MD. Black on Asian crimes only occur because our system of white supremacy that strips African Americans of their economic opportunities while taking respect and dignity away from Asian Americans. Also, white people in power are experts at dividing and conquering to stay in power. So a black man went off and beat up an Asian woman, and it's a white person's fault. I'm kind of interested in this video too, because this chick is based. So let's listen to this chick.
Just a reminder that whiteness can still be the culprit, even if a hate crime is committed by...
You said in your TikTok, white supremacy has many mouthpieces. Have you looked in the mirror? Do you have any idea what you're saying? Basically saying that minorities are incompetent. We are incapable of understanding the consequences of our actions. That we lack mens rea. What you're saying is white supremacy. Does white supremacy even have meaning anymore? You are saying that white people are the dominant race in America, that white people set the tone for behavior in society, and that in order for minorities to act right, white people have to act right. That we lack the mental capacity to understand that right is right and wrong is wrong. That in order for us to really understand what is right and what is wrong, we need white people to define that for us. I don't like to throw the word white supremacy around because I feel like it's losing its meaning, but you are a white supremacist. You fit the definition perfectly. My heart breaks for you because I understand that's not your intention. You need to take a quick look in the mirror. You are everything you're preaching against.
Just a reminder that whiteness can still be the...
Dude, I don't know who this chick is. This is the second time I've cited her, but that woman is based as hell. I want to see if I can reach out to her and get her on the show at some point, because that is awesome. But yes, it is white people's fault that this dude went out and beat up this Asian woman. Just so you guys know. All right, let's do a quick rundown of what's going on in Matt Gaetz' world. Matt Gaetz' father said he did wear an FBI wire to help his son expose ex-DOJ official trying to extort him for $25 million over a lie that he sex trafficked a 17-year-old girl. From Lauren Fruin and Jennifer Smith for DailyMail.com. Matt Gaetz' father has backed up his claim that he was extorted over claims that he slept with a 17-year-old and says he wore a wire to help his son expose it. Yesterday, it emerged that Gaetz is under investigation by the DOJ over claims that he had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old and paid her to travel with him. The New York Times, a former newspaper, first reported it, citing 3 unnamed sources who said the alleged relationship happened 2 years ago. Gaetz responded, denying all the allegations and claiming that Justice Department official Dave McGee was trying to extort him over it. McGee angrily denied his claim. On Wednesday, Politico reported that not only was the sex trafficking investigation underway, but that Bill Barr, was the AG at the time, knew about it and had no objection to it. Yeah, I don't know where this goes, and I don't trust anything that comes out of the mainstream media anymore. I honestly don't. If you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did this, then okay, let's take him to the fucking stocks. Let's get him out there, to the pillory with him. But this does kind of show some of the rotten corruption in the government as well. So, a lot of things going on with this. We got to keep watching this as it goes. No new details, just a confirmation that yes, the father was wearing the wire to try and trick the DOJ into incriminating themselves. Let's do a little bit of talking about the media here from Politico. McEnany named co-host of Fox News' Outnumbered. From Ben Leonard. Former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany has been named a co-host of Fox News' Outnumbered, putting one of the most prominent faces of the Trump administration at the heart of the network's midday lineup. McEnany, President Trump's White House press secretary from April 2020 until last January, will host Outnumbered, beginning April 6th, joining the show's founding anchor Harris Faulkner and co-host Emily Compagno, according to a press release from the network. McEnany, who also served as press secretary and senior advisor to the Trump 2020 campaign, joined Fox News as a contributor after the former president left office. So, she got to go up and be a press secretary, and now she gets a sweetheart lifetime gig over at Fox News. I don't have Fox News anymore because I don't have cable. I don't even know if Outnumbered is still, well, I guess it's apparently still up on the air, but I didn't know if it was still on the air. But those of you who like Kayleigh McEnany can go see her in a short dress 5 days a week at midday. Let's keep going. From the USA Today. I believe these are both from Ron Helton, these two. So, once again, and I want to remind you guys that if you want to help shape the show, there's the Discord and the Gilded in the description below. You can put articles into there, and I will vet them, try to match them to a green check verified source, and if I can, we'll read them up on the air, because this is the people's show. Pfizer and BioNTech study shows that COVID-19 vaccine continues to be more than 90% effective for at least 6 months. From the USA Today's Karen Weintraub. 6 months after getting a second dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine as part of a 46,000-person clinical trial, volunteers remain more than 90% protected against symptomatic COVID-19 and even better protected against the severe disease, a new company study found. Out of 927 trial participants who fell ill with COVID-19 more than a week after their second dose, only 77 had received the active vaccine compared to 850 who got a placebo. Bill, I went through your medical records. I got through all the unredacted versions, and it seems like for years you were injected with the government drug placebo. It's made by the Pfizer Corporation. I always think of that King of the Hill scene every time I see placebo. That's the first thing that pops up into my head. There were no serious safety concerns among the 12,000 volunteers who are at least 6 months past their second dose, according to the newly released findings. Many, however, did have a typical short-term side effect like fatigue and sore arms. The new data is likely sufficient for the vaccine to meet the criteria set for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for full approval. Still waiting for long-term shit. All 3 COVID-19 vaccines authorized so far from Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson are being distributed under emergency use authorizations rather than full FDA biological licenses because they did not have long-term safety and effectiveness data, and they still don't. The FDA allowed the companies to present only 2 months of data so they could get the COVID-19 shots to the public faster. During a global emergency, the agency said it would consider issuing a full license once a vaccine has a track record of at least 6 months, the same requirement for vaccines that prevent other infectious diseases. So it looks like some of these actually might be going to full approval. Let's see what the Chicago Tribune has to say. Johnson & Johnson. Oh, of course, they had to put one right up in there. Halts vaccines after about 15 million doses ruined. Workers at a Baltimore plant manufacturing 2 coronavirus vaccines accidentally conflated the vaccine's ingredients several weeks ago, ruining about 15 million doses of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine and forcing regulators to delay the authorizations of the plant's production lines. The plant is run by Emergent Biosolutions, a manufacturing partner to both Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca. Federal officials attributed the mistake to human error, which does happen every once in a while. The mix-up has halted future shipments of Johnson & Johnson doses in the U.S. while the FDA investigates. Johnson & Johnson has moved to strengthen its control over Emergent Biosolutions' work to avoid further quality lapses. The mistake is a major embarrassment for Johnson & Johnson, whose 1-dose vaccine has been credited with speeding up the national immunization program. It does not affect Johnson & Johnson doses that are currently being delivered and used nationwide. All those doses were produced in the Netherlands, where operations have been fully approved by federal regulators. So, a little bit of human error here. And this goes right back to everything else that I've said from the beginning of this. With the passport, with the vaccine, with the Comicoof, with the mask, it is your own risk assessment for you to decide what it is that you want to do and how you want to best take care of your own health and your own safety. Always has been. I may mock people who go out and get the vaccine now, but in reality, it's their choice to do so. If they want to get the vaccine, if they think that that's what it takes to keep themselves and their families safe, and that's the best option for them, then go and do it. I kind of wish you wouldn't go, when we'll talk a bit about this in a second, but I kind of wish that you wouldn't just go and throw your vaccine card around the way that you have, but that's between you and your Instagram following. If you want to wear the mask, and we'll talk about that in just a second too, if you want to wear the mask, then wear the mask. I'm not going to stop you. Don't try to impose it back on me. Same with the vaccine. If you want to get it, get it. Don't try to force me to get it, because I don't want it. If you want to stay in your house forever and work from home forever, Stay in your house forever and work from home forever. As long as you can keep the roof over your head and you don't have to rely on other people's taxes to do so, then stay in your house till the end of time. If you think that's what best assesses your level of risk, don't expect me to do the same. But also pay attention to stories like this, where accidents do happen. They absolutely do. And I mentioned on the Red Net Show on Monday, we were talking about the yellow star, the COVID pass. And I believe it's Superficial Space Meatball over on Twitter had asked why people aren't going and getting the vaccine, like what their reasons were. Appalled by the number of people who say that they're not going to do it because the government said so, because they want to be contrarian. And I know there are people out there that are like that. A couple of you guys I know personally that are like that too. I'm not going to name names. You guys know who you are. But in reality to this, and what we see from this, it's the fact that the government is moving so hard with the vaccine passport, with societal shame, and even with corporations coming out and trying to give away stuff, give you a treat to get the vaccine. It really looks like the government's trying to make this vaccine mandatory in whatever way that they can, even if they have to go outside the Constitution or hire private companies to go outside the Constitution for them. And when the government starts trying to make something mandatory, that's when I start getting fucking suspicious. That's when I start to wonder, okay, what's actually going on here? It's not that I want to get it because the government tells me to get it. That's not the reason. It's the fact that they're trying to make it mandatory. That makes me really, really nervous about what's in this thing. All right, let's keep going. Got vaccinated? Here's why you may want to keep that to yourself. From CNBC's Jessica Dickler. It's tempting to tell the world as soon as you receive the coveted COVID shot, but there's a reason to rein it in. For starters, sharing a photo of your vaccination card on social media makes you a potential target of identity theft, according to the Better Business Bureau. Not only does the personal information on the card, including your full name and birthday, make you vulnerable to scammers, it also provides all the information they need to create and sell phony cards online. These cards are often given after vaccine recipients get their first dose. So there's going to be a black market for this. If you want to post about your vaccine, there are safer ways to do it. The BBB advised, for example, share a photo of your vaccine sticker instead, or change your privacy settings so only friends and family see your posts. Such visual displays are key to spreading positive public health messages about the COVID-19 vaccine, the CDC and prevention said, and they can go a long way towards building confidence and encouraging others to get vaccinated. But with such limited supply and appointments hard to come by, posting about getting vaccinated, possibly ahead of high-risk candidates, also presents a murky moral dilemma, particularly as examples of the inequitable distribution of the vaccines increase. With supply so constrained, there's some inherent conflict there, said Stephen Thrasher, a professor at Daniel H. Renberg Chair of Social Justice at Northwestern University. We do have to wrestle with how this vaccine has been rolled out. Rather than figure out how you can get your own vaccine appointment, help others without the same time and resources, he said. More than 48.4 million doses of the vaccine have been distributed in the U.S. so far, according to the data from the CDC. Among those who received a first dose, 55% were over 50 years old. There's always going to be someone more in need of you behind you in line, said Zoe McLaren, an associate professor at the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We want to encourage everyone to get vaccinated and be proud of getting vaccinated. Good boy. Good boy. But until we have enough doses for everybody, we want to make sure that those doses don't go to the people who are at the greatest risk, she said. So that's what we have there. So no, if you get vaccinated, don't go and show your card, because you might get identity theft and you might get people pissed off at you because you jumped the line ahead of them. You know, like Congress did. All right, I got just a couple more, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. And head on out of here. From The Blaze, activists protest renaming Chicago school after Barack Obama calling former president another oppressor. I love this. From Breck Dumas, this was almost a thing that I like, but there's bigger news that I need to go on for things that I like today. From Breck Dumas, former President Barack Obama and his wife, former First Lady Big Mike, have been floated as the possible new namesakes of a school in their native Chicago. But not everyone's on board with the idea, and several activists even staged a protest where they claimed the former president is just another oppressor. The Waukegan Board of Education, because why would it be anywhere other than Waukegan? I know which school they're doing. I know which school they're renaming because they said, I didn't read this article prior. I know which school they're renaming. The Waukegan Board of Education is considering renaming a few of their schools due to the current namesake's ties to slavery, WLS-TV reported. One committee floated the idea of renaming Thomas Jefferson Middle School, currently named after the former president and founding father of America who owned slaves, after the Obamas. According to Fox News, that led to a protest outside the school board meeting on Tuesday. From the time Barack Obama became president until 2017 when he left, he today is still the highest ranking president with deportations in our nation, demonstrator Julie Contreras declared. We feel that Barack Obama did disservice to us. He denied us, and he didn't stop the deportations the way he promised. She added, if you're removing the name of Thomas Jefferson, one oppressor, the name of Obama is another oppressor, and our families do not want to see the same. You love to see it. And of course, it had to be Waukegan. Out of all places in the world it could have been. It had to be Waukegan. I thought we were going to be talking about inner city Chicago. The fact that they're making this about Waukegan just makes this even juicier, and I love this even more. Alright, last one, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. Facebook, Instagram scrubbed Donald Trump's interview with daughter-in-law Lara, from Joshua Rhett Miller. Facebook and Instagram removed an interview with former President Donald Trump and his daughter-in-law Lara Trump simply because it featured Trump speaking and the voice of Donald Trump, Facebook said in an internal email. Let me read that again for you. Facebook and Instagram removed an interview with former President Donald Trump by his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, simply because it featured Trump speaking and the voice of Donald Trump, Facebook said in an internal email. I don't even need to go through the rest of this to tell you the horrifying 1984 implications of this. We will unperson you. You won't even exist anymore. And it's not the government that's doing it. They're going out and they're having their corporate cronies fucking do it at this point. I didn't even know Lara Trump had a podcast either, but on top of it, oh my God. Do you not see the implications of this? In a time where you're trying to make a second-class citizen out of the people who don't go out and get the jab in their arms. This is scary stuff right now. This is horrifying stuff. And they're going to continue to do it. You're not even fit to be a person anymore. So definitely keep an eye on this one here. All right, let's do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate and head on out of here. You guys got a busy crowd today, and I got to go through 2 sources just to see what everybody did today, but that's okay. As long as you guys were in and chatting, I love seeing this. I love going back and reading all your chats at the end of this. But here we go. Thing that I like today from the Associated Press. You guys knew I was going to cover this because I was all excited about it over on Twitter. I almost opened the show with this, but I said, know what? It's Thursday. We're going to do a thing that I like because of this. From the Associated Press, Wisconsin Supreme Court strikes down governor's mask mandate. From Todd Richmond. I actually am going to do a dedicated solo video on what this means for Wisconsin and what the masking means full on and full out. So look forward to that. But let's just cover the story here. The Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down Democratic Governor Tony Evers' statewide mask mandate on Wednesday, stripping the governor of one of his last remaining tools to curb the spread of the coronavirus as the state stands on the precipice of another surge of infections. I need a citation for that, please. The conservative-leaning court ruled 4-3 that Evers violated the state law by unilaterally issuing multiple emergency orders to extend the mandate for months. It found that Evers needed legislative approval to issue more orders after the expiration of the initial 60-day mandate he issued in August. The question in this case is not whether the governor acted wisely, it's whether he acted lawfully. We conclude he did not. Justice Brian Hagedorn wrote for the majority. The decision marks another legal defeat for Evers. The state Supreme Court in May struck down his stay-at-home order, finding that his health secretary lacked the authority to issue such an order. A state appeals court blocked Evers' attempt to limit capacity in bars, restaurants, and other indoor places in October. Wednesday's decision comes as COVID-19 cases have been rising in the state. The 7-day daily case average has jumped from fewer than 400 in mid-March to 470. As of Wednesday, the State Department of Health Services Secretary Julie Willems Van Dijk said the state is seeing warning signs that another surge in infections is about to begin. Local mask mandates remain in place. The city of Milwaukee and Dane County, which is home to the state capital of Madison, both have issued such mandates, but invalidating the statewide order leaves Evers with few options to slow this virus's spread on a broad scale. Evers said in a statement that he's trying to keep Wisconsin residents safe and that he used science to guide his decisions. He promised to keep working to get people vaccinated and urged people to continue to wear masks. None of that matters. What matters is constitutionally in the state of Wisconsin, the executive branch has the power to issue one 60-day order for emergency use without legislative approval. And we have been going on this since August. This has been going on since August. That's longer than 60 days. He put the mandate in, and now here we sit. Now, Paul, the hairy-chested libertarian, came out and pointed out because one of the representatives came out and said he was deeply disappointed in how Wisconsin's court could do this and how Wisconsin could do this. Well, then stop relying on the executive branch and go do your fucking job, because you can still put a mask law into place. You can. It's very easy. You're in the legislature. It requires legislative approval. So go and fucking legislate. Go and legislate. Don't go back and rely on somebody who was elected by Madison and Milwaukee. Especially your fucking district on top of it. And I forget the dude's name, but he's District 45, which is just a little ways west of here. No, go and do your job. If you think that this is something that needs to be done, then go sell it to your Republican colleagues and get them to get on board with it and make a law. I bet you Tony Evers would sign it if you got it out there. But he can't go and do this anymore. And just think of the implications that go along with this as well. Oh, well, I'm only allowed 60 days. Oh, but I can renew it every 60 days. I'm a tyrant now. And you guys would be screaming tyranny if Scott Walker had done the same thing. You guys would be screeching tyranny if Scott Walker had done something like this with an emergency order and then 60 days saying, oh, well, it's still going on, so we have a new emergency order. You guys would be screaming fucking tyranny if he did the same thing. You know why? Because it's tyranny. Once again, if you want to be a legislator, go and do your job and legislate if you want this to be through. But I don't think half your Democrat colleagues won't get on board with this because they're from rural areas and they don't want to get slapped down by their constituents either. It's so much easier to go back and blame this on the executive and then virtue signal when he ends it. But that's what we see for Wisconsin. We are free. And there are a lot of businesses that still require it, and I'll leave this for my dedicated video because we are up on the clock here and I do have to get out to work at some point. But there are legislative things that go along with this as well, and other implications as well. Local businesses, local ordinances. But the statewide thing is down. And we'll talk a bit more about that when it comes to solo video time. Alright, now for a thing that I hate. And we got to circle back, Jen Psaki style, to go and talk about the Chauvin trial again. This article came out a couple days ago from the Washington Post, March 28th. And I saw the headline. This came to my attention because of an ad that I reported for doxing on Twitter. Because I was on my phone. I don't have an ad blocker on my phone. I have it on my computer. I don't have it on my phone. I found this, and I was horrified. This is doxing. This is nothing, plain and simple doxing. But the Washington Post writes, the jurors who will decide Derek Chauvin's fate. From Mark Berman and Holly Bailey. A white executive who has discussed privilege with her black coworker, a black immigrant who watched the video of George Floyd's death, then told his wife it could have been me, a multiracial woman who sees police officers as humans who sometimes make mistakes. These are some of the dozen jurors who will decide whether former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin broke the law when he knelt on George Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes while the black man gasped, "I can't breathe." So this goes on, and we went through this story back when they were doing jury selection, before they started to do all the shootings, so everyone stopped paying attention to the jury selection. And now this is what's going on with this. This is what gets me. Now, they give you the juror number. They don't give you the name. But they give a lot of details that would make this really, really easy for you to go back, and if you did some homework, to go. And I'm going to scroll through these. I'm not going to read any of this out loud because that is fucking doxing. So that's why I'm kind of just going through real fast. But I mean, just on the snapshots here, you can see enough detail in there that you can start to see what people, and I've read through this entire thing. It would be very, very easy to go through this list and figure out who these people are. This is intimidation. This is jury intimidation right here. And they don't have to give out the name, and they can still give enough details out there to say, hey, when this doesn't go our way, which, once again, I'm on a 50-50 shot as to whether this goes the BLM way. This could go legitimately either direction at this point. These are the people responsible. Go hold them accountable. And I'm sure that WAPO knows who these people are, knows their names, and might accidentally leak them. So this is horrifying. This is terrifying. This is what your government wants to do to you, too. There's so much detail in this article. And yes, everybody should go back and report this for doxing. If you see this ad in Twitter, too, go and report it. All right. And that is it for the day here, after I go on that rant there. And praise the Lord that we have no more mask mandate in this state. Look for a solo video. We're going to talk about what the mask mandate is and what this means now for the state of Wisconsin and other states that I've listed. So look forward to that here. I didn't put outro music up, but let's head on out of here. So switch up the scene. And let's go. So thanks everybody who came by and chatted. Sorry for the technical difficulties with the chat in the beginning, but thanks everybody. Make sure that if you are just lurking right now, you get those last minute messages in, because I sit back and thank everybody who chatted in the live chat at the end of the day every Friday. So you will get a special thank you from me tomorrow. I've got everybody's name listed so far. So everybody from the week is on there. Everybody who chats tomorrow will actually maybe catch some chats as well. If your chat is sufficiently stupid or bigoted, it will raise the intellectual level of this program, and it will get read on the air. So make sure you're participating tomorrow as well. And we are looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. We'll see what happens with the trial today and what other kind of fun news we can dig up. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Matt Gaetz. Maybe we'll talk a bit more about Wisconsin. We don't know. I have no crystal ball, but I can see some of the stuff that's coming up on the horizon. So definitely looking forward to that. We will see you tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.